So when I look back on my experience with gambling, I think that there are a couple, key points that I really focus on. The first is I wish that I would have known what gambling addiction was, and I wish that my parents would have known what gambling addiction was. It wasn't part of their vocabulary. They had no idea that they were potentially letting me be exposed to something that could be really detrimental to my life. I don't know if I would have had a different outcome, but I think that if I would have known the warning signs to look at in my, to watch out for in my early experience of gambling, I might have been able to kind of intervene a little bit earlier. Then I think, when I did start to experience a problem in my early 20s, I wish that I didn't feel so much shame and stigma about it. I wish that I would have sought help earlier. My whole conception of, what a gambling addiction looks like was if you're not going into debt, you don't have a gambling problem, right? Somebody who is addicted to gambling looks like that guy that I saw at the horse track, kind of disheveled with his last $5 on the ponies. You know, if I would have been able to look in the mirror and say, man, this is a problem and it doesn't need to get worse for me to do something about it, I don't think that I would have suffered as much as I did over that decade. And then I think finally, I wish that I would have been more open-minded. I wish that I would have been able to walk into that GA room and find the connection between me and those people because it existed, But I was young and I was in crisis and I was not super mature. And I really felt like, these are the resources that are out there. They don't work for me. And so I'm all on my own. And that just wasn't the case. I wish I would have had access to resources that resonated a little bit more with me and that I could see myself in. Oftentimes we talk about gambling addiction as being the hidden addiction because you can hide it from other people. I think it is more appropriate in US culture to ask somebody, what is your political affiliation? Or, what is your sexual orientation? Rather than how much money do you have in the bank, right? How much money did you lose in the casino yesterday? It's a very taboo subject. Um, but I think that, gambling can also really be a hidden addiction from ourselves. It took me years to figure out that it was the gambling that was causing me to drink. I used to think, oh man, I went to the bar, I had a couple too many, and I ended up at the casino. But really, it was that I was gambling, I was in action, and I was, feeling socially isolated enough to want to drink like that. So I think there are a lot of lessons from my own story, which I really try to bring into the work that we're doing at Evive.